Every 50 years, on the same cold February night, sailors off the coast of Kent report the same impossible thing. A beautiful three-masted schooner, sailing silently through the dark water, lights glowing, the faint sound of celebration drifting across the waves. And then, nothing. She vanishes. No wreck, no debris, no survivors. They call her the Lady Lovibond, a ship said to be cursed to repeat her final voyage forever. A wedding party, a jealous man, a murder at the wheel, and a deliberate, screaming run onto the deadliest sandbank in Britain. It is one of the most famous ghost stories the sea has ever produced. But here is the question that will haunt this entire investigation. What if the ship they are waiting for never existed at all? This is the Goodwin Sands off Deal in Kent, and by the end of this video you will have the answer: myth or reality. To understand this ghost, we first have to understand its grave. Stay with me. Before we talk about the ship, we have to talk about the sands, because the sands are real, and they have killed more people than any ghost ever could. A few miles off the coast of Deal lies a place that has terrified sailors for 1,000 years: the Goodwin Sands. On a map it looks harmless, a sandbank roughly 10 miles long at the southern end of the North Sea. The sands lie around 6 miles off the Deal coast and have been recorded as a hazard since at least the medieval period. But this is no ordinary sandbank. It is alive. It moves. It breathes with the tide. At low tide, parts of the sands rise from the sea and become a temporary island. The sand can be firm enough to walk on. Cricket matches have famously been played out there, on land that does not exist at high water. But that solid ground is a lie. When the tide turns, the firm sand turns soft. It liquefies. It becomes a kind of quicksand that takes hold of a grounded ship and pulls it down. If the hull is only half supported, the weight does the rest. The ship's back simply breaks. And the men who scrambled for safety on the sands, they had hours, maybe less, before the sea came back to reclaim the island and everyone standing on it. The sailors gave this place names: the Great Ship Swallower, the Widowmaker. It is widely estimated that over 2,000 ships have been lost on the Goodwin Sands. Real wrecks lie out there still. HMS Stirling Castle, lost in the Great Storm of 1703. The Dutch East Indiaman Rooswick, lost in 1740. The sands hold one of the highest densities of shipwrecks in British waters, and several wrecks are legally protected. This is the stage, a place so hungry for ships that a ghost story feels almost inevitable. And no ghost is more tied to these sands than the Lady Lovibond. So let's meet her. A wedding, a celebration at sea, and one man on board who wanted everyone dead. This is the story as it has been told for generations. The date is the 13th of February, 1748. The ship is a handsome three-masted schooner, the Lady Lovibond. Her captain is a happy man. In most tellings, his name is Simon Reed, though some accounts call him Simon Peel. He has just married a beautiful young woman named Annetta. And rather than leave his bride behind, he does something reckless. He brings her aboard, along with the entire wedding party. A celebration voyage bound for Upington in Portugal. Music, laughter, wine below decks. But there is an old rule of the sea, a superstition treated as gospel in the 1700s. A woman aboard a ship invites disaster. Captain Reed pays it no mind, and that is his first mistake, because watching the happy couple is the ship's first mate, a man named John Rivers. Rivers was a trusted friend. By some tellings, he stood at the wedding itself, but in secret he was in love with Annetta, and as the celebration wears on, that love curdles into something black. Jealousy, then rage, then something worse. As the Lady Lovibond nears the most dangerous water of the whole voyage, the Goodwin Sands, Rivers makes his move. He takes up a heavy belaying pin, a club of solid wood. He walks softly up behind the man at the wheel, and with a single blow, he strikes him down. Then Rivers seizes the wheel himself, and with a calm that is more frightening than any madness, he turns the ship straight into the heart of the sands. The partygoers below would have felt it, a violent shudder, the music stopping, the sound of timber tearing itself apart, and then the water. The ship is lost with all hands. The captain, his bride, every guest, and the murderer at the wheel, all of them taken by the sands. But here is the problem with the story. If no one survived, how does anyone know what happened? The legend has an answer ready. It claims that at a later inquiry, John Rivers' own mother testified that her son had sworn a dark vow of revenge. The official verdict, it says, was misadventure, a tragic accident. A neat answer, a little too neat. Hold on to that thought. Most tragedies end with a wreck. This one was only beginning, because exactly 50 years later, to the very day, the Lady Lovibond came back. The date was the 13th of February, 1798. The story goes that the captain of a vessel called the Edenbridge logged a near collision with a strange three-masted schooner sailing erratically towards the sands. A fishing smack in the same waters is said to have watched the same ship simply melt into the mist. 50 years pass. The 13th of February 1848. This time, it is said multiple witnesses saw a schooner matching the Lady Lovibond, with a faint sound of celebration carried on the wind. Local seamen were so certain a real ship was breaking up that they launched lifeboats from Deal. They rowed out into the dark and found nothing. No wreck, no bodies, just the empty sea over the sands. 50 more years. The 13th of February 1898. Another reported appearance. A perfect rerun of that final doomed voyage. And then, the most famous sighting of all. The 13th of February 1948. A man remembered as Captain Bull Preswick claimed to see the ship as solid and real as any living vessel, wrapped in a strange, unnatural glow before it vanished. A ghost with a timetable, an anniversary kept by the sea itself. The pattern was set. The next appointment was due in 1998. But before we get there, a question started to bother the people who study this story. It is a perfect tale. Romance, betrayal, a precise, predictable haunting. Almost too perfect. So what happens when you stop looking for the Lady Lovibond in the fog and start looking for her in the records? If you're enjoying this investigation, the Myth or Reality store has everything from original ebooks to exclusive merchandise. The link is in the description below. Now, back to the Lady Lovibond. The story has been printed as fact for decades, so the proof should be easy to find. It should be. Watch what happens when we look. The legend of the Lady Lovibond is one of the most complete ghost stories ever told. It has everything, and for decades, book after book has repeated it as history. So modern researchers did the obvious thing. They went looking for the ship. They combed through the great historical records of British shipping, Lloyd's List and Lloyd's Register, the definitive registers of vessels and their fates, kept since 1730. They searched the newspapers of 1748 for any report of a wedding ship lost on the Goodwin Sands, and they found nothing. Let that land for a moment. There is no contemporary record of a ship named the Lady Lovibond, no record of a wreck in 1748, no Captain Reed, no Captain Peel, no Annetta, no first mate named John Rivers. The entire cast appears to have come from nowhere. And that official inquiry, the one where the murderer's mother gave her testimony, there is no record of any such hearing taking place. The detail that gave the whole story, his ring of truth, seems to be an invention. This is not a small gap, it is a fatal one. The loss of a wedding ship full of guests on Britain's busiest shipping passage would have been enormous news. It would have been everywhere, and instead, silence. Total silence. Which leaves one cold conclusion. The tragedy of the 13th of February, 1748, is not a documented event. It is a ghost story whose foundation may never have happened at all. So if the ship never sank, where on earth did she come from? The hunt just changed. We're not chasing a ghost anymore. We're chasing the moment a myth was born. The origin of the Lady Lovibond is not in an old ship's log. It is in a newspaper, and the date will surprise you. Researchers George Bay and Michael Goss trace the story backwards through time, and despite a legend that supposedly began in 1748, they could find no reliable mention of the Lady Lovibond anywhere before the 1920s. The earliest known version appeared in British newspaper on the 14th of February 1924. It is generally cited as the Daily Chronicle. The 14th of February, Valentine's Day, and here is a detail the legend usually leaves out. The earliest 1924 version did not date the wreck to 1748 at all. It placed it in 1724. The famous 1748 date came later, cemented by George Goldsmith Carter's 1953 book, The Goodwin Sands, which retold the story as established fact. So the dates do not even agree with each other. That is not how real history behaves. That is how a story behaves, and it is retold and tidied up. Bay and Goss concluded the tale was most likely a 20th century invention, possibly written by a journalist, possibly inspired by a real ship seen somewhere between 1914 and 1924. Built on the standard furniture of every ghost ship legend, and timed beautifully for Valentine's Day. A doomed love story set on Valentine's Eve, published on Valentine's morning. Once it was in print, it spread from the newspaper into Carter's book, into collection after collection of ghost stories, each one quoting the last. A long chain of sources that all led back to a single, unverified article. This is why it feels too perfect. It was built perfect. The clean 50-year cycle, the classic love triangle, the mother's testimony added like a signature to make a fiction feel like a fact. So the ghost ship we thought sailed from the 1700s is, in all likelihood, a phantom of the 1920s, born not from oak or canvas, but from a journalist's pen. But that still leaves one loose thread. If the wreck and the cycle were invented in 1924, then what were people actually seeing out there? If the ship never existed, then something real was being seen on the water. The explanation has a name, and it is older than the legend. If there was no Lady Lovibond, what sailed past those witnesses every 50 years? The most convincing answer is not supernatural at all. It is a trick of the air itself. A mirage, specifically a kind called a Fata Morgana. The name comes from Morgan Le Fay, the sorceress of Arthurian legend, said to conjure phantom castles on the water to lure sailors to their deaths. A Fata Morgana forms when a layer of cold air sits low over the sea with warmer air above it. That boundary bends light like a lens. The image of a distant object, a real ship, a stretch of coast, even something below the horizon, gets lifted, stretched and distorted. A small fishing boat can be transformed into a towering schooner floating above the waves. The image shimmers, it shifts, and it can vanish in a heartbeat. It looks, for all the world, like a phantom ship. It is very possible the sightings of 1798 and 1848 were Fata Morgana mirages of ordinary living ships. And once the legend became famous after 1924, the rest was done by the most powerful force of all: suggestion. When you are standing on a cold shore on the 13th of February, expecting a ghost, your eyes will help you find one. That strange glow around Prestwick's ship in 1948 could have been a mirage carrying the coloured running light of a real vessel, seen through the lens of a story everyone already knew. Which brings us to the final appointment, the 13th of February 1998. By now the legend was world famous. Journalists and ghost hunters gathered on the Kent shore, cameras ready, waiting. The night passed, and the Lady Lovibond did not come. For the sceptics, that empty sea was the final proof. For the believers, it changed nothing. Perhaps the curse was broken. Perhaps the crowds frightened her away. A story like this does not die from a no-show. It simply absorbs it. So we come back to the question we started with. So, what is the final truth of the Lady Lovibond? In the world of hard facts, she does not exist. No record, no wreck, no captain, no bride, no murder at the wheel. She is, most likely, a phantom of ink and paper, born around Valentine's Day, 1924, as a perfect piece of romantic, tragic journalism. Yes, the Goodwin Sands are real. Yes, they have swallowed thousands of ships. But a real graveyard does not make a real ghost. The setting is true. The story is not. So when we ask at the start, what if the ship they're waiting for never existed at all? Here is your answer. She never existed. The sightings, tricks of the light and the power of suggestion. The 50-year curse, a clean, invented number. The whole haunting, a story that became so good it started to feel like a memory. The verdict, for the record, is clear. The Lady Lovibond is a myth. A magnificent one. A story that gave a human face to thousands of real deaths on the sands. But a myth all the same. But now it's over to you. Do you agree? Or do you believe something still sails those sands on the 13th of February? The full verdict is in the pinned comment. The choice is yours. Investigate, decide, discover the truth.